This is Norman Kissinger from Redeeming the Time Brothers Ministries, and we're going to continue with our study of idol worship. And I'm going to read here from Acts chapter 17, verse 16, and we're going to read down here all the way to, let's start in verse 22. And I'll just tell you that the context of this is, just to save some time, is that the Apostle Paul is in Athens, and while he's there, he began to preach in the synagogues, and he preaches, and the different Greek philosophers of the Epicureans and the Stoics, which were two different philosophies of life, they said, "Who is this guy who's babbling on about the resurrection? Let's hear what he has to say," or whatever. And then the Apostle Paul says to them, "Then Paul stood up in the midst of the Areopagus, and he said, 'Men of Athens, I perceive that in all things you are very religious. For as I was passing through and considering the objects of your worship, I even found an altar with this inscription, to the unknown God.'" Now, he goes on then to tell them who the real God of the universe is, and he begins to, point out worship. And, their worship. And it is interesting that he said that they were very religious. That was an interesting phrase that he said there. And the reason I think that phrase is really interesting is because today, if you went into a university and there was somebody there that was extremely humanistic, and by the way, humanism is a religion, and they pretty much reject the idea of God, and everything was always here naturally, and God is a construct of the human mind, and all of those thinking or whatever. And you would say to them, as the Apostle Paul did here, it was interesting that some of the most intellectual people, if you think back in time and you think about smart guys, then you would think about the Greek philosophers, and you think about Plato, and you think about some of those ancient Greek guys who were sitting around thinking a lot, and they were thinking about the philosophies of life and human nature and getting along with people and all kinds of things. So we consider them very wise. But it's interesting, I notice here that the Apostle Paul said that as he was walking around Athens with these people that were very intellectual, that they had all kinds of idols that they worshipped. So many so that they didn't want to forget a God, and they actually made a statue to the unknown God. If there's some God out there, we want to make sure we get him so that we're not, making him mad. So we're going to give a statue so that people can worship the unknown God. And so the deception sometimes in the church, and certainly in the world, is the idea that the more intellectual you are, and we humans that we're studying or we're doing whatever, that somehow or another that makes us immune from idol worship. And we would look our noses down at the guys and gals in the grass huts who have the idols they carved out of wood and stone. But the truth of the matter is, this passage makes it very clear that these very intellectual, deep thinkers that come up with some good stuff, not everything they said is anti-biblical, they come up with some good thinking on some things, or good ideas or whatever that are not necessarily, that are truth and not necessarily anti-Bible. But these thinkers here, these deep thinkers, were deeply idol worshipers. And that's why I would argue that we very much are like Athens today. We got a lot, universities, and we consider ourselves to be very intelligent and as a nation, and that we're, and we're very rational and we're very deep thinkers. But the truth is that we're not really that different than ancient Athens here in Greece. We're just not. We are super idol worshiping. And quite frankly, the point here is that you can be worshiping God, or you can be worshiping an idol. You're going to worship one. Choose who you worship, because we're going to be in Judgment Day one day. There's no neutral ground. You either worship God or you worship idols. It's just that simple. Now, your idol may not be somebody that's something that someone could see. If they were looking around, they might not see it. I don't know. But I do know that that we all have idols in our hearts. Remember last time we talked about the fact that idols come from our very hearts. So all of these idols here are just a reflection of all of the idol worship that was going on in Athens at the time. Truth of the matter is that probably the more we think we're intellectual and the higher we think we've gotten socially as a culture, probably the more idol worshiping we are, not the opposite. We want to deceive ourselves into believing that it's different. All right. So the idea here is just understanding that that idol worship is something that men, pardon the bad English for any English teachers out there, idol worship is something that men can't not do. If we're not worshiping God, we're worshiping idols. It's just that simple. And we can worship God and still have some idols that want to be there in our hearts. And it's very easy for us to be like them. So we can't look our noses down at the Greeks. We are really not a whole lot different than them. This is Norman Kissinger from Redeeming the Time Brothers Ministries. I want to give you a blessing here. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. God bless you. You have just a great week.